All right, guys. So it looks like we have some breaking news here. So Kamala Harris, I believe, is now considered to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. I think she's gotten enough delegates to be determined as the nominee, and her campaign is pretty much has been off to as best of a start as possible. I don't really think there's too much else that could happen. There was even like that kind of the video that I did the other day about how she was protested by pro-Palestinian protesters and her response wasn't very good. And she actually responded again in another campaign rally where she basically says we need a ceasefire now, etc. So she's definitely listening and she's definitely adjusting. And then she chose Tim Walz as her vice president, which is obviously the best move. And the poll numbers are just through the roof right now, right? They're kind of getting close to like Biden 2020 numbers. So the campaign is pretty much gone as well as it possibly could have. She's made all the right decisions and all the right moves for the most part. So this might even be more surprising because there's this report out that is talking about how there's actually a lot of tension going on behind the scenes inside Kamala HQ. And so I'll explain to you what's going on. So this article from Politico, they always got like the really juicy breakdowns. It says Kamala Harris United Democrats, her campaign still has fractures. The early tensions could dissipate or fester and spiral. So it says Kamala Harris's campaign is navigating internal tensions as a new team of senior strategists take hold of an operation largely staffed by people hired when Joe Biden was the Democratic nominee, according to 6 people, including aides familiar with the dynamics. Longtime Harris loyalists are also chafing at the continuing presence of some Biden aides known for disparaging the vice president, 3 of the people said. So another thing I want to mention too, I don't know if you guys remember this, but early on in the 2020 presidency for Biden, there were actually reports of a lot of clashing going on between Kamala and Biden because Biden viewed her as a potential threat, right? And I guess he was technically right? Because she was the successor, right? But he ended up choosing her. There's even an Obama conspiracy theory that Obama wanted Mark Kelly or somebody else, maybe Deval Patrick or something. But at the last second, he's like, I'm dropping out, but I'm going to choose my successor. There's kind of a conspiracy theory going on there. It's allegations. Don't know if that's true or not. But they were clashing with each other. And so there was a lot of controversy between themselves because she felt like, you're shuttering me, you're giving me the border, not giving me a chance to shine, you're just kind of pushing me away and just kind of giving me a bad rap. You know how like a lot of black coaches in the NBA, it's like the only opportunities they get is like with some trash ass team like the Magic. I know they're good right now, but usually they suck. So something like that, right? It goes on. The unfolding friction is a result of an unprecedented overhaul of the Democratic ticket less than 3 months before the election, a daunting task that requires integrating 2 political worlds while at the same time selecting a vice presidential nominee and battling former President Donald Trump. I don't know if they're going to integrate by parts or what strategy they're going to use, tricks up. Then it goes, and it requires negotiating a new structure at the highest levels of the organization. Jen O'Malley Dillon, the former Biden White House official and campaign chair, told Harris in a phone call that she needed specific assurances that some of the campaign's new power players, including David Plouffe, Barack Obama's former campaign manager, would not dilute her decision-making authority, 2 of the people told Politico. Those people, like the others who detailed the campaign's internal dynamics, were granted anonymity to convey private conversations. So she looks like she's tapping into the 2008 Obama campaign. I think she's probably trying to model her campaign stronger off of that. I think she kind of wants to run her campaign not via the 2020 Biden strategy, because the 2020 Biden strategy was the basement strategy. It was an anybody but Trump strategy. And I think that we figured out that this race isn't working that way, because largely what it looks like is somehow, because of the way the price levels are, because all the traditional economic measures are all really good right now, but I guess because prices are so high, people don't like the economy, and so people are voting for Trump as if he were the incumbent with the good economy. It's kind of weird. So usually there's an incumbent boost if the economy is doing well. The economy is doing well by all possible metrics right now, all of them, the traditional ones. But I think we're entering the death of the era of the traditional economic measure, because price isn't really an economic measure. Inflation is the economic measure, but inflation is measuring the rate of change of prices, right? And that's low. That's very close to the Fed's target rate of 2%. I think it's like 3 something. So I think she's trying to run a campaign that's more on like vote for me, not just against the other person, which I think is smart. So it says the call last week came after advisors in the vice president's inner circle pushed hard to hire Plouffe, whom Harris wanted on the campaign to provide counsel. Politico was first to report the Harris team's interest in Plouffe, and first to report his hiring more than a week later. After O'Malley Dillon's call with the vice president, the Harris campaign marked Plouffe's arrival on a long list of staff additions with titles that one aide and a close ally said don't convey their significance or necessarily their proximity to Harris. He described Plouffe's title, Senior Advisor for Path to 270 and Strategy, as severely downplayed, given those duties are typically the purview of a campaign manager. And they noted with suspicion the campaign manager Julie Chavez Rodriguez, a Harris alum from 2020 who went on to hold key positions in the White House and Biden sphere, was assigned the new specific task of focusing on Sunbelt states of the American West, as well as Latino voters, considering Harris's increased competitiveness in those states and her depth of experience. They viewed it as a demotion that further diffuses her overall power. A senior official pushed back on those characterizations. The official stressed that Chavez Rodriguez's new duties were being added to her current job, and that the incoming senior advisors, including Plouffe, all have a defined portfolio. In his case, it's to closely collaborate with O'Malley, Dillon, and others to execute the campaign's state-by-state strategy, in addition to advising Harris. Others brought in include the veteran strategist Stephanie Cutter, a senior advisor on messaging strategy, Mitch Stewart, senior advisor for battleground states, and Jen Palmieri, senior advisor for the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff. I've seen some kind of weird, speculation about Emhoff because he has his own advisor and all this stuff, and I think there's a debate going on. I don't know if this is supposed to be normal, where the second, gentleman, or I guess prior to be woman, has their own advisor. Maybe they do. I'm not sure. I guess they probably might. But some people are saying that he's kind of trying to make the moment about himself. There's no doubt when you have 2,000 people and you are changing who's at the top of the ticket that it's going to take a minute to make sure that everyone's seated well. And we still have some work to do on that, O'Malley Dillon said in an interview. But I think ultimately when you look at what this campaign has accomplished in such a short amount of time, now people went from working with the president at the top of the ticket to flipping immediately to the vice president on the top of the ticket. It does show at its core really strong support for the vice president and strong collaboration. And so this article kind of goes on here a bit to talk a little bit more about this. It's saying all this comes to a campaign built to think and speak in the voice of Biden, had to sharply adjust as taking cues from Harris, and it's just kind of talking about this. So Sheila Nix, a senior advisor and chief of staff to Harris, issued a statement in which she contrasted the campaign's progress with what's happening with Trump. This is a team that within a few short weeks has changed candidates, added a running mate, seen hundreds of millions of dollars pour in, all while the other guys growing increasingly unhinged and dangerous. So they're kind of trying to take that. So it's saying anxiety inside the campaign could still dissipate over the 3-month sprint to November, but aides fear they could grow in scope and significance and lead to trouble down the chain of command. Harris built a chaotic operation in her 2020 presidential primary campaign that she allowed to fester, causing bottlenecks and radiating dysfunction across her organization. In the first years of her vice presidency, she also saw several staff departures and internal fissures that re-endorsed the idea she couldn't properly assemble and lead a harmonious team. But Harris and her staff have worked hard to overcome all the old dramas in a curtailed 2024 campaign. It's the latest test of whether she could keep it up. Taking a handful of people in Harris's circle told Politico they worried that the unfolding tension among campaign staffers will splash back on the vice president and argue it's unfortunate and unfair given the strides she's made in recent years to build a cohesive and loyal unit. But some Harris loyalists have picked up on former Biden aides grumbling under their breath about now having to work for her, and there's considerable ire directed at top digital strategist Robert Flaherty, whose title includes Deputy Campaign Manager. And so there's just a bunch more details here. It says Flaherty and collaborators stumbled when making an early take of a launch video for Harris based around the theme of freedom, according to one person involved in the process. The person said the earlier version featured shots with primarily black women in the background, which threatened to typecast Harris as having a narrower appeal rather than demonstrating her ability to unite voters from across communities. So there's a lot. So I guess the original video had to be outsourced by the DNC. So just a lot of kind of bad stuff going on here. But with all this said, I'm surprised because, again, Kamala seems to have ran the most cohesive campaign possible at this point. I'm not really aware of any super moves she could have done that would have been much better or anything like that. She's made the right decision for vice president. Tapping into the 2008 campaign for Obama, I think, is an interesting decision, but I think it's kind of a contrast to the 2020 Biden strategy, which is the basement strategy, the anyone but Trump strategy. I think she's more I want people to vote for me. I think that gives me the best chance to win. It's probably the best odds. And so I think that she's probably making the right decisions, and I would probably just get rid of most of the Biden people if I were her. Probably, I don't think they're really compatible with you. There's already a lot of tensions going on, and then any kind of advice they probably have is probably going to be skewed in favor of the 2020 strategy or strategy that's ticketed towards Biden. Now, I would still keep a Biden voice on there just because it's good to have dissent. You don't want to just have a dictatorship where it's just one line and that's it. You kind of need people who are going to have a contrasting view that you can, bounce off of. So maybe keep one voice. Maybe have one voice who's a Biden person, but most of it you should pick your own squad. pick your own team. You should cater it towards this election. And so if you're going with the '08 Obama strategy versus the 2020 Biden strategy, I think that's a better decision. I think that running on things will give you a surefire way to victory. Because I think this time around, I think people are looking for something to vote for. But I'm also there also seems to be a really big situation of there seems to be a big anti-Biden vote or not Biden vote, similar to the way there was with Trump in 2020. There's like a Trump anti-vote in 2020, and then now there appears to be an anti-Biden vote, similar to the way there was an anti-Trump vote. So you kind of, I don't know how much of it is going to be that in terms of how much votes you're going to get. But I think she's done a good job so far. But I would personally say, like, get rid of most of them. You still want a voice on there because you want a contrasting voice, and then you want to kind of have the strategy that you think is best, which again I think is probably the 2008 Obama strategy is probably a better strategy. And I'm honestly really surprised at how chaotic behind the scenes are, because behind the scenes it sounds like really, really horrible. And I don't know who, the David Plouffe had talked to the news about how Obama and Josh Shapiro had a really close relationship. So Kamala Harris not choosing Shapiro, is that indicative that she's not entirely susceptible to her own advisors? I don't know. I think that's a good thing, likely, that she's not just going to be 100% in line with whatever her advisors say. She's going to kind of think for herself. But again, I'm just really shocked at how well the campaign has been run, considering there's so much chaos going on behind the scenes. Because you now have this Kamala Biden's whole relationship has been this very bizarre, weird relationship where they've always had this beef. I don't know if it's like you would consider it like a Goku Vegeta situation, but they've kind of always been beefing really since day one. Even the debate. But he picks her, and then there's fighting going on during the presidential, a term for Biden. So there's kind of this clashing relationship going on. So I would probably just get rid of most of the Biden people. I don't think they're of much use to you. Maybe keep a couple of dissenting voices, but kind of put your vision in. And I think that the '08 Obama strategy is probably better than the 2020 Joe Biden strategy this time.